I'm probably going to upset a lot of people with this video, but you know what? It's my honest opinion based on my experience. If I ruffle a couple feathers or upset a couple of fruit baskets, I'm sorry. Feelings may be hurt in the making of this video. Viewer discretion is, you'll be fine. Hey y'all, my name is Nick and welcome back to State of Woods Co. I want to dive into the world of CNC in this video. And not just dive in, I want to jump way deep into the thoughts around what to buy and what not to buy when it comes to CNCs. I have for the past year been learning and growing my CNC knowledge to the point where I'm doing production runs 2 to 3 days a week and custom furniture and content creation the rest of the week. A year ago, I didn't even know how to turn on a CNC, much less know how to run one. Now a year later, it's a true business for me. And I want to go through with a fine-tooth comb the machine that I have and the machine that I'm switching to and the reasons why I'm making the big switch. Now I want to make this completely clear. Neither of these CNC companies gave me any machines, any equipment, or any money. I purchased both of these machines with my own cash. Now I thought I would tarnish my relationship with one or both of these companies with the information that I'm about to give you, but I really can't. Maybe. I'm going to go over my current pro-level Avid CNC and compare it to the S-Series CNC from Phantom CNC Systems. Now some of you guys are going to say, well, isn't that sort of like comparing apples to oranges? Is it though? I'll show you why it's not right now. The Avid CNC is a remarkable machine, no doubt, but buyers beware, you could say. Avid people, don't yell at me in the comments just yet. I don't want to upset the masses, but I want to give some of this information to you guys as well. So let's dive in and look at the differences between these two machines. Avid CNCs are known to be great starter machines or even pro-level machines. The first main benefit is that you get to build this unit yourself. I would say that Avid's probably the most well-known bolt-together CNC company out there. This will come right in off the delivery man's truck in a multitude of boxes, and you can bring it in and put it together. If your shop doesn't have a garage door or a roll-up door, this thing will come straight through the front door. If you time your packages correctly, you may even be able to sneak this right past your wife.
What are those?
The Phantom comes in one big package right off the delivery truck and into your shop, as long as you have roll-up door or garage door. Now you will need a way to pick this machine up, and the best way to do that is to rent a forklift from your local rental agency. For about $200-300, you can rent a forklift for the entire day, and you can drive your machine right in and set it where you need to. Or you can lift it up and put it on car haulers from Harbor Freight, and that allows you to just wheel it around anywhere you want and then set your machine down. Now building your machine can be cool and all, and yes, you will learn a ton by putting this thing together yourself. But you should just plan on 3 to 5 days of building it. This process takes forever. Now the instructions on these machines are well made and easy to follow, and they're available for download on your computer or your smartphone for easy reference. But this one stings for me a little bit. To me, it's like getting a present on Christmas morning, but having to wait till New Year's to open it. Now for some people, this is a major perk, but for others, they're sort of like, well, you know what? I only have to do this one time. Well, I don't exactly agree with that. The Phantom CNC is basically ready to go when it gets here. All you have to do is wire up your plug to 220 and have the air compressor line in. That's about it. If you're going to use the vacuum pumps, you just wire up the vacuum pumps to the table, you're good to go. If you're like me and you get overexcited about new toys and want to play with them, this is a major perk. Plus, if you have CNC jobs that you need to get to and there's no downtime needed for it, you can get right to plugging it in, playing with it, and making money. Avids are well known for building as you grow or building the table size that you need, even if it's massively oversized. Their first pro-level machine starts at 4 foot by 2 foot and scales from there. That is one thing I like about Avid's products, but there is one downside to it. If I want to go from a 4 foot by 2 foot all the way up to a 5 foot by 10 foot machine, I'm going to have to build it myself and retrofit it with the kits that they provide. This again takes time. Plus, if I have a small machine with a small spindle and then I decide to go and upgrade to a big boy table, I'm either going to want or need to upgrade to a bigger spindle. So now I have to go that route and make those additional purchases and upgrades as well. Phantoms start at 4 foot by 4 foot machines and scale up from there, up to a 4 foot by 8 and even a 5 by 10. But you can also have them custom build you any size machine that fits your needs. They build these machines, and as of right now, there is no option to scale your machine as you grow. But all three of their first series machines, their SC44s, SCRs, and S-Series machines, all have the exact same parts. Same spindle size, same motors, same drives. So no matter if you're on a 4 foot bed or a big 10 foot bed, all of your parts are already scaled. The frames on Avids are extruded aluminum. The reason that Avid uses this material is because it's easy to manufacture. It's lightweight, so it's easy to ship, and it provides that ability to scale your machine as we talked about before. The real reason that it comes down to is just it's easy for Avid. Easy to make, easy to ship, easy peasy. Phantom CNCs went a different direction and not an easy one. All of their machines are fully welded steel frames. This steel is almost 3/8 of an inch thick. They're extremely heavy, and for CNCs, that's a great thing to have. Let me explain. Because the Avid is built with extruded aluminum, the table base is fairly light compared to other CNC companies. I do want to say this, Avid is not the only company that uses extruded aluminum for their frames, so I don't want it to come off like I'm attacking them for this design. But it's been in my shop and I've been using it, so I'm going to attack it a little bit. The lightweight nature of this frame leads the machine to become, how do I say this, unrigid, unstable if you will. The machine, when it's running, can actually sway and move with the movement of the gantry and the spindle. Which, when you're doing work, can correlate to movement in your bits and cause chatter depending on your workpiece and your material that you're cutting. For some projects, this won't matter, but when you start to dive into precision cuts like 3D carving and production runs, that rigidity issue is, well, a real issue. I usually run my spindle at 18,000 RPMs, and depending on the project, anywhere from 200 to 400 inches per minute. Now when those motors and that gantry start to move really quickly at those high speeds, this machine can almost walk across the floor. And for me, that's a real issue. Phantom's frames being fully welded steel and very heavy result in no movement. This unit weighs around 2,300 pounds, so there is no walking this machine across the floor. The high speeds on this machine allow it to move very quickly, and there is still no movement in the table. And in fact, I can't find any chatter in my final cuts with this machine, which is what we're all striving to find. Now the downfall is, yes, this machine is very heavy and it's hard to move. But we're talking about pro-level CNC machines here. Why would we ever be moving them around the shop? And you say that we're just going to build once with an Avid. Well, we're only going to move once with a Phantom. And the welded frame and the weight of this thing adds to the rigidity. I just feel like it's a massive upgrade. We also have to take into account the height of the table and the gantry. My table legs were cut shorter than a standard Avid because they always seem so tall out of the box, and it's harder to get big sheet goods on and off of a tall table. So by cutting the legs of the table, the center of gravity is lower, so the chatter or movement should be reduced. But we also lighten the weight of the base, which would increase that movement again. The height of the gantry is important as well. The taller the gantry on any machine, the more you're going to have that vibration in the bit, which can cause chatter. It's just like the old pencil wiggling trick. You know, the one we played in elementary school, where you hold the pencil way out from the end and you wiggle it and you've got all that motion. But then when you pull it tighter in, so it's a shorter distance, you don't get that same motion. It's the same thing. It's the same on a Phantom. Regardless of the brand of CNC, the higher the distance is from the spindle down to your bit and the material, the more mathematical probability that you're going to have movement and chatter. It's really just science. I've always been a fan of tall gantries on CNC machines, especially for slab flattening or anytime you're cutting material thicker than sheet goods. Now the Phantom CNC comes with almost 12 inches of cut capacity underneath the gantry, whereas the Avid comes up about 4 inches short of that. Now it's always important to remember, the more you can keep that spindle close down to the cutting surface, the better and more accurate your cuts will be. I just want you to keep all this information in mind when it comes to buying your CNC. Phantom CNCs are designed with lower table heights than an Avid, which keeps that center of gravity lower, and with these heavy frames, basically eliminates any and all movement. Now let's talk about the different parts and components of each machine. The first thing everybody wants to know about is the size of your spindle.
Dominasti.
Avid has two different sizes. They have a 4 horsepower and an 8.7 horsepower like I have here. This is true, but it's also a fib. This spindle puts out 8.7 horsepower through a VFD, a variable frequency drive, and at peak performance of 18,000 RPMs when it's running on 3-phase power. Now most of us don't have 3-phase power. Hardly any of us really do have 3-phase power in our shops. So this unit has the capability of running on single phase 220, but it only produces 6 horsepower through the VFD. And it still has the same peak performance of 18,000 RPMs. So that's what I run this on. I use single phase 220 with a 30 amp breaker. Phantom has one option for spindle sizes on their S-Series machine. This is a 220 30 amp power source as well, and it runs off of VFD, which provides a 6 horsepower spindle. Now both machines, the Phantom and the Avid, actually run the exact same spindle, an HSD and an HQD. The exact same spindle underneath a different brand with a different name. Avid has an air-cooled spindle, which means that there's fans on the inside, and as the spindle spins, there's air that's forced through to help keep the spindle cool. Phantom and Avid again use the exact same spindle basically. The only difference is that Phantom went one step farther. They added an air mist oiler to their spindles. This allows you to put compressed air aimed right at the bit to help evacuate chips and keep that bit cool and running longer. Plus, if you're cutting metals like aluminum or brass, you can put oil into the reservoir and it'll shoot that oil right on your bit and keep everything lubricated. Avid doesn't have this option available. Again, you can build this yourself with parts that you get off of Amazon, but you're having to spend more time and more money when you could be using that time and money somewhere else. Now let's talk about movement control. Avid uses stepper motors and belt-driven gears to control their machine. They use NEMA 23 or NEMA 34 stepper motors to control the X and the Y. A NEMA 34 is just a larger stepper motor that provides more power and more torque. Phantom uses the bigger NEMA 34 motors as well. The only difference is that they're all gear-driven drive and not belt drives. Belt-driven drives aren't typically used in pro-level CNCs. The reason being is because they provide higher friction loss, which means less torque, less transfer of energy to where you need it, and they don't last as long. There's a lot of downsides to belt-driven drives. They can slip, they can break, they can wear easily over time, whereas a gear-driven drive doesn't do that. It has higher torque, higher power, more control. We all have to do maintenance on our machines all the time. Just like changing the oil in the old pickup truck, it's a necessary evil. The most in-depth maintenance needed on an Avid, besides just blowing the sawdust off, making sure the rails are clean of debris, and blowing out the electrical panel, is to make sure that the housings for all the bearings on the linear rails are greased all the time. On these Avids, you have to use a grease gun to squirt grease into these bearing blocks to help them keep rolling smoothly. This isn't really that hard to do, but you have to have a grease gun and you have to have the right fitting to fit these small nipples in the blocks. Phantom has spoiled us with automatic oilers. We literally just make sure that this reservoir stays full of any 10W30 style oil. We push a button on the controller maybe once a week if you're using a machine every week, and it automatically pumps oil to all of the rack and pinion bearing blocks. It's so easy. I love it. The problem that I found with Avid's rack and pinion system is that it's pretty easy to move or stop or get off step. Getting off step means that the motors or gears get off course of where the machine thinks it is. It's usually resulted from it hitting something very hard or hitting resistance and causing it to go out of step. Now that usually results in inaccurate cuts or the machine will cut off completely. One of the most common ways that your machine can get off step is when the Y-axis or the stepper motors on either side of your gantry are no longer running in parallel of each other. And what that means is that one side of your gantry may have hit something or had a lot of resistance, and one motor got stopped and one motor kept progressing, and so now this gantry is not perpendicular to the table right at 90 degrees. Now sometimes you'll be able to hear this and you'll know that your machine has gotten off step. but sometimes it's subtle enough to where you don't notice it or the machine doesn't pick up by alarming you, but yet your cuts are not as accurate, and you'll see that in your finished product. If you've been running a job for several hours and a piece gets dislodged and slams up and puts too much resistance on the spindle and gets everything off step, sometimes you can go back into the program and look at where in the G code it got off step and start it again. But most of the time you have to start all over, and usually your piece that you just spent hours on is now trash. The Phantom, on the other hand, is a completely different story. This thing is built like a tank, and I can move it barely, but only by a couple millimeters at a time, and it's not getting out of square at all. I don't know if I can get this out of step. I've been running it, and I've had no issues even closely to it bogging down or getting out of step. So I would assume that if I ran it off the table and hit the sensors, then maybe, but I don't even think their software will let me do that. They have a lot of safety features like soft limits, which won't even allow me to run into my sensors at the end of the table or the gantry. They help prevent a lot of those human errors when we aren't paying attention or aren't thinking clearly. You know, sort of those Monday morning problems. What runs your machine? Most Avids are running Mach 3 or Mach 4 software by now. These are softwares that run your G code created by your toolpath softwares like vCarve Pro. The only downfall with this is that Avid runs all of their machining software on a PC. Everyone knows that Windows updates can just sort of pop up at any time and completely ruin your day. Imagine being in the middle of a job and your computer restarts because of one of those updates. Everything stops. And then imagine that Mach 4 is now not compatible with that new Windows update, and your machine is completely dead in the water. You have to find a workaround or wait for a new update to come out. Who has time for that? Phantom doesn't rely on a PC to run its G codes. It runs everything through a standalone control system. You simply just import your G codes with a USB into this DSP device, and you can control the entire machine from right here. This allows us to not have to worry about software updates or third-party programs that could crash the CNC party. It's just another layer of peace of mind right here. So now let's talk about hold-down options. CNC users find several different ways to hold down their materials to the work surface. Every CNC machine needs some form of a spool board, and 99% of those spool boards are made of MDF. Now, MDF has some major benefits that we'll get into here shortly, but one thing that I love about MDF is that it allows me to screw or nail material right down to the bed itself. I love using this composite nailer from Omer. It makes life so simple to just go to your sheet good or your blocking and shoot a composite nail right through down to the MDF. The good thing about this is that if a bit hits this, unlike a screw, it will not damage the bit. It will just destroy the composite nail. The nailer itself and the composite nails are available on Avid and Phantom's website. You can pick up these composite nails a little bit cheaper on Amazon. There's a link in the description below. Now, of course, MDF can be used on top of Phantom tables, and the composite nailer does come in really handy. But Phantom also provides other options. One option that a lot of CNC users use is they like to install T-Track, no matter the brand of CNC that they have. They install T-Track into the spool board or on the sides, but the problem is we have to install it ourselves. Phantom has already installed T-Tracks and provided you with 4 clamps. They're located on the outside edges of the tables. And the good thing about it is that these come standard on all their machines, so it's one less thing I have to add. But Phantom went another step further. Their machines come standard with pneumatic rollers, which roll across your sheet goods and hold everything in place with 600 pounds of downward pressure. This keeps my sheet goods and materials from sliding or moving around at all. We have all purchased warped plywood from the big box store, and on a CNC, that can create elevated workpieces which cause you to have uneven cuts or not square cuts. For example, if I'm doing any type of rabbets or dado cuts for cabinetry or even V-bit carvings, and my work surface is elevated off the bed for any reason, then my dados and rabbets and depth of cut with any type of bit is going to be off a little bit based on how the bow of the workpiece is. But if I use these rollers, I have no issues with my depth of cut across my whole work surface. People's first reaction to the rollers is that they're going to get caked up with sawdust and scratch my work surface. Well, physics tells us that rollers, as they roll, they add a downward force to your work surface, compressing any fibers on top of your work material. If they were just sliding across or gliding across the work surface without rolling, then they would obviously be scratching your work surface. Now, sawdust is a much smaller and softer particle than the material that you're cutting in a solid form. So compression onto the work surface is not really an issue either. We can cut full sheets of acrylic on these machines and never scratch the glass-like surface. These rollers are amazing hold-down options, but these aren't even Phantom's best stock hold-down option on their machines. Vacuum tables are probably the most sought-after CNC hold-down option, if users can afford it or have time to build one. Now, in terms of physics, a vacuum table is simply just creating a body of negative pressure underneath your spool board, which unilaterally causes the environment around us to push down on the top of the surface of your workpiece, holding it down tight to the table. Now, we can accomplish this negative pressure by pulling that air through a spool board when it's made of MDF. Here's the only problem though. Not all CNC companies have this option available. On an Avid U-Build-A table, there is no option to purchase a vacuum table ready to go from Avid. It takes a process of designing a grid-like pattern on the table, which allows for good airflow and creates those good areas of suction to the table. Now, there's a ton of YouTube videos all over the internet about this process, but again, it's just that. It's another process, and it'll take at least a day to design, cut, and build the vacuum table the way you would need it. Not to mention that you have to design and run all the plumbing and purchase all the plumbing equipment needed to plumb it to the vacuums. Speaking of vacuums, you're going to have to buy vacuum pumps or a black box system like a Hurricane to run the whole system. And when this video was released, the Hurricane system was costing right at $2,800. That's a lot of work. Jeez. Phantom went a completely different direction. All of their machines, with the exception of their SCR series, already come standard with a solid Bakelite multi-zone vacuum bed. They've already created for you the perfect vacuum table. Now that saves you a ton of time when it comes to construction, design, plumbing, you name it. Now, let's talk about the plumbing of this vacuum table. Phantom has already done this for us. The table comes plumbed with wire-enforced air line to each zone of the table. They have 4 zones that are controlled by 4 different valves to increase or decrease suction to a specific area. Let me say this again. They have already done this for us. The only thing we have to do is run plumbing from the vacuum pumps to the table itself, and that's the easiest part of any vacuum table build. But what about the price of these motors? Well, Phantom uses 2 rotary vane vacuum pump motors that run off of 220. Both of them run off of 30 amp breakers. Now, these motors right now on Phantom's website are running at $750 a piece. So for $1,500, you can have basically a completed black box system, which is comparable to that Hurricane box system, except this is $1,300 cheaper. Now, I did put my vacuum pumps outside because I shoot content and I wanted it quiet. So I mounted them outside and built a little lean-to over the top of them to keep them out of the weather. This only cost me $200 to put together, and after running it and leaving it outside, I have a completed vac system for $1,700. So basically a completed vacuum system consists of hooking up 2 motors to power and bringing your line into the machine, versus with an Avid having to customize it, build it, design it, all of that. To me, this is a no-brainer. I want the fastest and easiest route to get to the point where I am cutting on the machine. This is where the comparisons get really interesting. So from the information that I've told you, you've probably already built an idea in your head that one brand's machine is more expensive than the other. Well, would it surprise you to know that you're probably not entirely correct? So my Avid, to recap, is a build your own unit. I would have to build my own vacuum table, 6 horsepower spindle on single phase power, belt driven drives, extended gantry, and aluminum framing that doesn't really allow for much in terms of rigidity or chatter control. Now, when this video is released in 2022, I could purchase this machine exactly for around $19,000 without shipping. Now that seems a little high for a build your own unit, but it's actually right around market value average. But again, Avid is sort of setting the bar for the build your own at market value. So take that or leave it how you want. So my new Phantom CNC with fully welded steel frame, the vacuum table that's already built into the machine, basically the same powered spindle but with air and oil mist cooling, the automatic oilers, the strong micro steppers, and the T-track and the rollers that come standard right off of the truck. This machine, when this video dropped, could be purchased for $19,500 without shipping. For a fully welded machine with all these bells and whistles, that is unreal. Even the closest competition on solid frames like this would be 5 to 12 grand more. Now, of course, shipping and getting it into your shop is going to cost more than 20 boxes coming off of a FedEx or UPS truck, like a couple grand more. But for me, it's still a no-brainer. Now, you're going to ask, how do you get all of this engineering and advancements on CNCs for such a small price tag? Well, the owners and operators of Phantom, even down to their dealers and content creators, are all makers. They want to be able to provide these machines at a reasonable price because they know what it's like to be dreamers. They know what it's like to build a business from the bottom up. They know how hard it is to get clients, but they especially know how hard it is to be able to afford equipment for your shop. Now, they handpick every component of these machines so they know exactly how much it costs to make, and they don't push a 200% markup to you as the client. Now, I know this sounds way too good to be true, but if you've ever known me at all, you know that I pride myself on honesty. And this machine has been in my shop. It's been working for me. I've been making money with it. I love this thing. And I pay the exact same price that you're going to pay. It's truly not a joke. This thing is not too good to be true. So we can chat in the comments below about, oh, it's not even the same two machines. It's a joke. You're comparing apples to oranges. You can't have champagne taste on a beer budget. Well, I look forward to all those comments, but let me tell you this. Look, both machines are great, and both machines have a place in this field. The bolt together option with Avid allows people to install it anywhere they want, and it gives them the ability to scale as their business grows. Now, I don't want to say that Avid doesn't put a quality part out, because they do. It's an amazing unit. They've helped thousands of people to get into CNC and to start CNC businesses just like me. When you're starting like I was, why not start with a more production-ready machine for around the same price? To me, it's an easy question to answer, and I hope that you've learned from my experiences with both machines. I wish I had known about this unit when I started my journey. Go ahead and share this video so we can get the comment section throwing out debates about which machine is better, which is not, and how I was right or wrong. I'll be eating my apples and drinking champagne on my orange and beer budget. I'll see you guys on the next video.